Hello, Dan White.
Hello,
Welcome
mate.
to All the States. How's it going?
It's good to be here, my friend.
Mate, it's really good to have you on, and thanks for making the trip over from the Isle of Guernsey.
Flew all the way here just for this.
Oh, mate, we appreciate it. So for people that don't know, Dan is a holistic health coach. I know Dan, he's on the Carter Institute, which I've mentioned a few times before. But he also owns a company called Sleep Better, Live Better, which is all about optimizing your sleep, circadian rhythm, and just general health. So we're going to dive into that a bit. But Dan, do you just want to give a little bit of your background, how you got into all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I'll try and not make it the longest story in the world. So I'm 28 years old. When I was 14, 15, I got really heavily addicted to video gaming. Like, I'm talking like heroin addiction to video gaming. Like,
What video games are you talking?
I played World of Warcraft, man. It was like Dungeons and Elves and
good game.
stuff. It was a good game, but
What class were you?
I went.
I knew you'd be into this.
I like warrior and paladin. I flicked between.
Classic tank.
At one point, I was number one. I was number one rated paladin in the world at one point in the arena. So I was pretty serious at the game, but it completely just decimated and destroyed my life. And I put on like 3 or 4 stone. Like dropped out of school, messed my GCSEs, messed my A levels, all of this sort of thing. And then when I was 17, I was like, need to sort this out. So I went into the traditional route of like, Men's Health Mag and count your calories and hit the gym, and ended up with an eating disorder and like really messed up mental state around fitness and nutrition and stuff like that. Went and did a degree in psychology when I was 21. Learned a hell of a lot about how not to treat people, basically. All we spoke about was eating disorders and drug therapies and counselling and stuff like that. Then I went and did my master's, which was in nutrition and behaviour. So went from talking like not about food and mental health at all to basically exclusively about food and mental health. Started to sort myself out a little bit. Got into functional medicine, which is this kind of like a preventative approach to healthcare, talking about mind, body, spirit, and like things I'd never heard of before. So since then, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've just dived into like every area of health. I'd call myself like a super generalist, a bit like a Swiss Army knife. And then about 3 years ago, I was doing some really awesome work in the community with an osteopath, and we were running these like lifestyle programs, and we were like transforming the health of our community. And I had a really nice girlfriend. She was lovely. She left, and I was there like, oh, this is burnout, this is crap. And took a bit of time off work, started to dive deeper into, I'm at a point of like no return. I'm just like, if I learn something new, surely this will sort me out. And I came across a guy called Jack Cruz. I don't know if you've ever seen him. Dr. Jack Cruz. He's on Instagram, and he's talking all about light exposure and like epigenetics and electromagnetism. And I'm like, what the hell was this guy on about? But I was pretty desperate at the time, so I started like watching the sunrise and wearing blue light blocking glasses, and then discovered like the whole world of sleep science. And like my life completely transformed through that. But as I'm sure we'll talk about today, I started to see the potential and the possibility for some really simple tools and interventions that I was learning about to make like magnanimous shifts to like society as a whole. So about 3 years ago, I wrote my first ebook. I think everyone's done an ebook. Didn't sell. No one was very interested in it at the time. Turned it into like an online course and program. Launched Sleep Better, Live Better, which is the company that I operate now. So I do like lifestyle coaching, looking at everything: nutrition, stress, movement, all this biohacking, all this ancestral nutrition, functional medicine, all of that. That's kind of like I call it my detective work. I like to work with professional athletes, CEOs, all this sort of stuff. But the majority of the time I'm focusing on like community and big impact through my Sleep Better, Live Better company. So I'm working with organizations. Now, actually, I'll just drop this in straight away. I'm doing this project with a school in Guernsey. So I've teamed up with these researchers at Lancaster Uni, and we're going to be giving these, we'll talk more about these as well, these blue light blocking glasses to like 300 kids. and we're going to be measuring the impact it has on these kids over like a period of 2 or 3 weeks.
Amazing.
And then starting to look at, you know, putting some of these sleep related interventions into like hospitals, offices, schools, professional sports teams and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, it started off as like I was desperately ill and mentally really screwed up, and it's turned into like 10 years of me learning more about myself and then being there like, oh god, everyone else has to know all of this as well.
Yeah. It's so funny how when you come across different people in this industry come from disparate backgrounds, but it's just that similar thread of a story where they've had their own injury or their own health crisis, worked it out over a number of years painstakingly, and then thought, I can streamline this for other people and just start, you know, create a course or whatever.
That's it. And you know, like for me, I've got this burning desire to like leave a legacy or like do something big. And at the minute, I mean, for the last 9 months I've been working on this schools project, and it's literally felt like a pipe dream to me. Every day I wake up and I'm like, I want to do this thing and like give all these kids these things and change the way that schools work and change mental health in children, all this and that. But I'm the only person that can like see this vision. Yeah. And I'm just like moving towards it like we all are, you know, with our own kind of niches within this kind of natural health kind of industry, I suppose. But it's funny how we all seem to come together around like that common story.
The school's a massive one, because we did a Q&A as our last episode, and one of the questions that got left out by Alec, the question master, he managed to wheedle his way past this one, but someone asked what are like the 3 biggest changes you'd want to make to like society as it is. And one of my sort of answers when I was thinking about it was like the schooling system for sure, because if you change that, you could literally change how the world operates within a generation. And sleep is a massive one, especially for kids. Like, you probably know better than most, being a gamer. Like, a lot of those games are getting paid like 2-3 a.m, right? You're up all night
and the rest
with a Red Bull in the hand, just like completely out of accordance with your circadian rhythm.
I mean, I was turning up at school when I was 16, like falling asleep in my English lesson, like dribbling on myself because I was probably getting like 3, 4, 5 hours sleep like
every night.
Every night. And it was at the point where like as a teenager, like your requirement for sleep and good quality sleep is the highest it is at any other point in your life. Like how I have turned into a handsome, intelligent young man that I have as a result of what I've done, God knows.
Did you have to quit games cold turkey?
So yeah, and I can only imagine it might be what like a serious drug addict has to go through, like in terms of
it was hard, like real hard.
It was real hard. And in fact, I actually got into gaming again a little bit over COVID and lockdown and stuff, because my mate still plays
relapse.
I had a little. I was there like, oh yeah, I can do this thing. Like I could just play this on a Friday night with my mate, and then it was like a Monday night, Wednesday night, Friday night, and then it was like all of a sudden I was like, I'm losing motivation for like the things I care about. And then I was there like, get out of here.
Was it World of Warcraft again?
It was the remake, the classic. Literally the remake of the classic.
Straight back into that trap.
Straight back into it. Ding, 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 ding. Even let's not even go into it. I don't want to think about it.
I know what you mean though.
So you said then, right, kids of school age, right, sleep is probably most important then during when the brain's developing and stuff like that. How much sleep do you reckon children should be having, and how much sleep should adults be having?
Yeah, so it varies a lot. So in terms of like your 24-hour body clock and your circadian rhythm, it really like adapts over time. So like as babies, obviously you're sleeping anywhere up to like 16 to 18 hours a day. Sleep needs begin to reduce, but the problem is once we get to like older teenagers, kind of like adults and stuff like that, generally speaking, our environment is so messed up that we're actually sleeping a lot less than we kind of should be. And we're saying that, you only need maybe like 7 hours of sleep, 7.5 hours per night. But when you start to look at like indigenous cultures and people who lived out in the wild and still do, like it shifts like seasonally. There are times where people need more sleep, less sleep, all these sorts of things. But like as teenagers generally, like the school system messes them up, because teenagers tend to go to bed a little bit later, but they should be getting up quite a lot later, whereas most kids are being forced out of bed quite a lot earlier because they got to get the bus to school or this or that. And school start times are, they're a big like contentious issue within like sleep research. But being a teenager is the most like anabolic time of your life, and like nutrition's obviously important, the ability to feel safe and not stressed, but sleep is like the tide that raises like all of the ships, if you like, in the harbour, to use a Matthew Walker quote, I think. Yeah.
You can't do a sleep podcast and not quote Matthew Walker.
No,
right?
you can't.
So then as you're reaching adulthood, would you say with the seasons it would change. So say, for example, in the summer, maybe 6-7 hours of sleep would do you, but then when we're approaching winter time like we are now, you might be looking more 8-9, even more than that.
Well, it all comes down to light exposure, right? So, you know, for 99.9% of the time that we've existed as a species, the only light that we had access to was sunlight, moonlight, firelight, right? Then 120, 130 years ago, Thomas Edison does or doesn't invent the light bulb. I don't really care who did, but there's electricity, you know, there's power plants, industrial age. Oh, we can work longer, you know, we can get people in factories, you use light bulbs. Back then it was like fluorescence and halogens and stuff like that. And so we are the only species in the world that's like tempered with like the most powerful force on Earth, which is like light. Everything on Earth exists because of the sun, which is like electromagnetic energy that comes. And for millions of years, it was telling us, you know, the cycle of light and dark, when to wake up, when to go to sleep. So the point you just made, you know, I've got friends that live in the wilderness, fair play to them. I haven't quite gone that far yet. But in the winter, they sleep a lot more. So they'll be sleeping from like 6, 7.
Well, they're like log cabins.
Yeah. So, but obviously it's pitch black, right? So they're not, you know, the darkness is what encourages your body to produce the hormone melatonin, which is what induces, it doesn't put you to sleep, but it induces this state of like relaxation and wind down. And like all of these LEDs and stuff that we surround ourselves with are like completely contraindicated to that. So we really, you know, what we're doing in sleep research is we're studying sleep in the modern world. We're not really connecting with like how humans have slept, because you look at like the Hadza tribe in Africa, they go to sleep just after sunset and they wake up just before sunrise. But in Africa, because they're on the equator, that's pretty much the same time every day. But we don't really know how that would look for those of us in the northern hemisphere.
Yeah, so interesting. And on that point, like I've mentioned this a few times before on the podcast, how basically our eyes are an extension of our, but they're part of our brain, right? Our eyes. And when we're looking at blue light, our eyes don't know the difference between blue light from a TV or a laptop or your phone or the sun. And because of that, we don't release melatonin till all those devices are turned off, which would usually be, you know, it would usually be the sun going down, signal our brain to start releasing melatonin. Because all these devices, we don't end up doing that. Interestingly, I believe that candlelight and firelight don't have that same effect as blue light. So, you know, ancestrally, we could have been looking at fires originally and then, you know, eventually candles, and it would have still had that same effect in terms of releasing melatonin when it should be released.
Well, this is it. So, you know, to dial it back a couple of steps, you've got this 24-hour circadian rhythm, this body clock, and it controls how every single cell in your body functions. Right? So people think, oh, your body clock, sleep. It's not just that, you know, it's your digestion, your metabolism, your growth, your repair, your libido, your immune system, literally every single cell, every single mitochondria, you know, the most basic energy producing kind of components of the cells in your body have a 24-hour timing system. And for millions and millions of years, it worked in accordance with nature. And when it got dark, your body produces sleep hormone melatonin that helps you to wind down. Melatonin is actually like an anti-cancer hormone. It's an immunoregulatory hormone, so it's not just about sleep. Basically, the more melatonin you can produce in your lifetime, the longer and better life you're going to live. But your body naturally would suppress melatonin in the daytime in the presence of what we call blue light. Now, blue light gets like bastardized as this terrible thing. It's incredibly important, to be honest. The sun is full of it. It wakes us up. It energizes us, helps us to produce more cortisol, go out, hunt, fish, gather, do all that stuff, make love, you know, fight wars. But then the sun sets, and if you've ever watched sunset or if you've ever been camping, looked at the firelight or campfire, whatever, it's like ambers, reds and oranges. And so on the kind of spectrum of colors that we can see visibly with our eyes, we go from like purples, blues, greens, ambers, reds, oranges. The purples, the blues, we call them higher energy density, and then lower at the other end. So the warmer oranges, ambers, oranges, ambers and reds, and they're very relaxing basically. They don't have the same impact. So when the sun sets, you know, from the point at which it sets or just before until the next day in the middle of the morning, you don't see any blue light in nature. You might get a little bit from the moon, but doesn't have the same impact. Whereas now we have screwed it up like hard.
And on top of that as well, you've not only got the blue light, but you've got people eating meals at times we would have never, you know, done ancestrally. And exercise as well, people exercising late in the day. You know, ancestrally we would have got up, cortisol would have been high when we would have got up in the morning. That would have been the signal when the light had risen to a certain point for us to go out and hunt and go about our day. And then, you would have come down, and when you're having that campfire in the evening and those lights starting to go down, that's when you would have had your last meal. Now people are eating meals after the sun's gone down, and also exercising after the sun goes down, and that's going to mess up your circadian rhythm as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's really simple. You just got to dial it back to nature. Like, whenever I'm doing talks and stuff for corporates, and they're like, you got caveman Dan, and he's out in the bush, and he's, hunting and fishing, gathering in the daytime because it's daylight, and that's the only time you can do those things and eat. And then when the sun sets, like, you wind down, you sing, you dance, you make music, you make love. You didn't see people like going out and doing marathons at like 8 o'clock at night, or like eating in the dark. And when it comes down to this like 24-hour system, it really buggers you up, like your metabolism in terms of food, your sleep quality, how you digest the foods, like all of these sorts of things. And obviously we're looking at like professional sports, looking at kids and stuff like that, getting kids training at like 8 o'clock at night on a football pitch with like big floodlights like staring in their faces.
Yeah.
Getting home from training at 9 o'clock, 9:30, having dinner, expecting to like wind down and like recover from the intense activity you've just done. It's it's obviously how things are set up, but thankfully there are ways we can kind of like still exist in this modern mess up and not feel the impact so much.
So one of the things, as I understand it, sleep is probably our biggest recovery tool, right? It's where our body goes through physical and mental recovery. So do you want to talk a little bit about the sleep stages, how long they last, what happens in each one of those?
So sleep is really interesting. It's like this journey every night where you go through different cycles, and in each cycle of sleep, which lasts about an hour and a half, there's different stages. So we used to call them stages 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's non-REM, non-rapid eye movement, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And there used to be rapid eye movement sleep, which is like colloquially known as like dream sleep. And actually, if you were like, for example, to watch Izzy sleeping, about every hour and a half, her eyes would start to like flicker rapidly up and down, because that's actually what happens. It's pretty nuts. And we now call it stages 1 to 3. And basically you have light sleep, stage 2, and then you go into deep sleep, and you go into REM, and it cycles through this each night. And the greatest opportunity that we have to have the best quality of recovery comes in the first couple of hours a night, because this is when we produce more deep sleep. And then towards the end of the night, what happens is we produce more rapid eye movement sleep. Now, all of these different stages, they have different impacts and effects. So deep sleep is to do with a lot of like deep hormone rejuvenation, release, growth hormone, testosterone, all of these sorts of things, repair, rejuvenation, whereas REM has been shown to be associated with more like processing of emotional experiences, more dreaming and stuff like that. But what's interesting is that now in our modern lifestyles, certain things such as the wrong type of light exposure, or alcohol, or marijuana, or eating at the wrong times, they all specifically impact like different areas or different stages of the sleep.
That's nuts.
So generally speaking, stages 1 and 2, light sleep, you should be spending about 60% of your time in that, and then about 20% in deep sleep and 20% in REM sleep. But most days, these people, most people these days, I should say, are probably getting a lot lighter sleep than they actually think they are. But they're like normalized it. Like the phrase, we've always done it this way. Like the amount of people that I work with, they're like, oh, you won't change me. I've been running on 6 hours or 7 hours for a decade, or, whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's great. You've been suboptimal for your entire life and you don't want to change it. Nice one.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it, how quickly you can adjust. I find this because I stopped drinking alcohol for a long period of time after drinking, not loads, but like I'd go out after rugby or whatever and have like 6 pints, and then I had a beer and I'm halfway through my beer and I'm pissed. So it's like
for me.
But it's crazy how quickly you can adjust. And it's the same thing with sleep, right? So when you all of a sudden you get used to operating off 6 hours, and then when you finally optimize and get back to 8, it's crazy how much better you feel off that.
Yeah.
So with you mentioned alcohol there. Whenever I've like been drinking, say I've been drinking on a Saturday, on the Sunday night afterwards, I always wake up at like 4 a.m. and having like night terrors.
So this is really
interesting. Is GABA? Is it GABA?
So alcohol is related to GABA, which is a neurotransmitter, right? So you produce more GABA when you're drinking, makes you relax, makes you more sociable, stuff like that. Then you get this deficiency and this rebound effect. But interesting what you say about the night terrors and dreams, because both marijuana and alcohol, they suppress rapid eye movement sleep, which is dream sleep. So we were talking about this earlier. That, you know, the night after you've been drinking, you'll get a rebound effect where your body wants to like make up the missed like dream sleep, and you get the same like if you're a long-term marijuana smoker and you stop. A lot of people I think struggle to stop because the dreams and stuff like that get so intense for a period of time. That they can feel quite frazzled from it.
That's crazy as well, because the fact that they're nightmares, is that a common thing that they're nightmares, or is it just more intense dreaming?
I think, you know, it's hard to say. We don't do a lot of research into like, you know, what impacts people over their lifetime. You know, if they got a lot of trauma stored in their bodies, there's a lot going on subconsciously for them, maybe that's leading to more nightmares as opposed to just like vivid dreams. But yeah, it's like well researched phenomenon.
Well, be aware of your body going, don't do that to me again.
It is exciting. There's never been nice dreams. I've ever always been quite intense, not like bad dreams.
It's not
but it's literally always exactly the same time. It's like I can't, and it actually makes me quite apprehensive to go to sleep before, because I know it's all amalgamation. You know, you get like that Sunday dread feeling where you've got the
beer fear.
Yeah, beer fear, and I don't know. I'm going to be aware. And it's literally the same time every night between 3:45 and 4. I'm like, ugh. Just like absolute fear. And you know,
it's so I had an Oura ring for a while. I don't know if you wear an Oura ring.
I haven't brought it with me, but I have got one.
So for anyone listening that doesn't know, Oura rings a ring that you can wear which can track your sleep, and it shows you your sleep cycle. So you link it up to an app, and it'll tell you how much deep, how much REM, how much light sleep, and it'll show you when you woke up and a few other different bits and pieces. But I remember going out with my mates. I hadn't drunk for ages, and we went out for Christmas Eve, and I had like 5 or 6 pints, and my sleep, I had about 4 minutes of deep sleep.
It's tragic.
But I thought I woke up, I was like, I feel ropey. But yeah, literally when I looked at my Oura ring,
it's
awful.
Nuts. Like Matt Walker in his book, on one of his podcasts, he says like, you know, you'd be better to have like cocktails at lunchtime than at nighttime, because at least you can clear all of the booze out your system by the evening. But yeah, it's crazy, and then it's not just, you know, booze and like marijuana, for example. It's like light exposure, food, temperature,
sugar,
you know, actually sugar, you know, blood sugar imbalances. But light exposure, for example, they did research looking at, so say you took like 20 people, put them in a lab. First 5 nights, I want you to read on like an iPad, like a brightly blue LED lit iPad for 2 hours before bed. Then they send them home for a bit, they bring them back, and they get them to read like just a paperback book. And what they find when they're staring at the iPad, so I mean that could be synonymous to like your mobile phone, your television, LED lights in the house, you know, tablets, laptops, computers, whatever. It's just blue, white LED light, which is like everywhere. Is that it delays the circadian rhythm, so it suppresses melatonin like timing, which then messes up cortisol timing the next day. So not only are you falling asleep later and getting tired later, but you're waking up and feeling energized later the next day. It can reduce melatonin production by up to 50%.
Jeez.
And melatonin is like one of the most important hormones that your body makes, right? And as well as that, it suppresses deep and REM sleep. So it's like, yeah, you know, we could talk about booze and other things all day, but light is the like elephant in the room when it comes to sleep.
Yeah, okay. And also it's like way more chronic, isn't it? Because you're doing it every day. Everyone, like, you know.
Well, that's it.
Enjoys watching those Squid Games late at night. When
but TV. I mean, the thing is, like, I hold my hands up. Like, I've tried to watch the Squid Games. I'm not that big a fan, to be honest. But I use my computer laptop at light, but I use programs or I use tools that can help to filter the light, because at the end of the day, like, the genie's out of the bottle, if you want to use that saying. Like, technology's not going anywhere. It's getting faster, better, stronger. You know, we've now got it hooked up all over the house and this sort of thing. So the question for me now, especially like in how I approach kids in schools, because, you know, when I was 14, 15, if you came to me and went, get off the computer, I went, get off your horse, mum. You know what I mean? So it's like, how can we now like have a symbiotic relationship? How can we, like, you know, get along with technology, get the best out of it, but not absolutely destroy ourselves in the process? And a lot of that does come down to, like, you know, the light that's coming out of the devices and stuff like that. And there's some really simple ways, and we can talk about them if you want. In terms of like how to filter that.
Is it pretty much a hard sell with like adolescents? Trying to get them to adopt any kind of change to their. If you explain the risks to them, are they receptive to it?
So this is my favourite thing about it, and this is why, you know, part of why my company is now begin to. I mean, we're not working with adults, but we're now focusing a lot on children and adolescents. Is because number one, like, that's the person. I mean, I'm trying to save the person that I was, right, at some point, but also because as adults, we develop like these ways of being, right? And then we go, this is me, this is who I am, you know, this is my emotions, this is how I behave, this is my personality. You're not going to change me. But if you've got a kid, you know, many of which now, more than ever before, are suffering from anxiety, depression, you know, poor sleep, poor health across the board, whatever. If you say to this kid, you do this thing and you're going to feel better, the kid's like, what is it? Because I don't want to feel like this. As an adult, we go, oh, that's me, you know, I'm this way, I've always been this way, you're not going to change me. So, like, for example, with these things, these blue light blocking glasses, we give these to kids and we say, I don't want you to come off, you know, the Xbox, the PlayStation, whatever. I just want you to wear these glasses, which filter that blue light out for 3 hours before bed. They do it, and what they find is they fall asleep quicker because they produce more melatonin and all this sort of thing. And then they're waking up the next day. And the amount of parents I've had come up to me and go, oh, you know, I want a pair for me now because my kids are like, why am I not using them? When it's like obvious, because the kids are there like, well, they work, and you're not asking the kid to like change their diet or give up their sugar or stop gaming or anything like that. You're just saying, put these glasses on your face. It's like
such an easy intervention, isn't it?
It's not the biggest, it's not the hardest sell ever, to be honest.
So how do the blue light blockers work?
Cool. So there are different types of lenses, right? And this is where people get really confused. So the pigment in the lens can block certain amounts of blue light. Now, you've probably seen a lot of like clear lens blue light blocking glasses. Yeah. They sell them for like office use, excessive screen use. Those are helpful. They block differing amounts. So really the highest amount that you can block without changing the lens color, the ones that our company sell are 52%. So if you're in front of a computer, office all day, strip LED lighting, stuff like that, you get eye strain, or you just generally feel a bit tired and frazzled from that. Yeah, those are really, really good. But in terms of the nighttime ones, what you need is either an amber or a red lens. Because the amber and the red lens, they both block 100% of the blue light. The red lens goes a little bit further and blocks 100% of the green light. Okay. But what we found is that they're the hard sell because they make things really, really dark. So generally speaking, like the amber lens, let me want to try them on.
Yeah, I'll try them on.
Like, try them on, look up at the light, because these lights are, you need to change these lights.
I wear my blue light blockers in it.
Yeah,
they are quite harsh, aren't they? Yeah, no, they're not harsh anymore now. These glasses on.
But you can also get the red ones. So, like, I mean, when I got into this field, like all the big companies in America, RA Optics, Blue Blocks, they sell the red ones, and they're for, you know, the hardcore elite health enthusiast. But your general person on your street, your family, you know, just most people get along well with the amber ones.
So I bought a pair of raw optics Blue Blocks before I knew about your company.
Yeah.
And mate, I have to take them on and off. It's like I'm on like a little spy mission in the evenings, because I'll be upstairs and there'll be like a low lamp on, and I'll be able to see okay, and then I'll go out into the corridor to go downstairs where there'll be no light on. I can't see a thing, so I'll have them on the top of my head, and then I get down, the light goes on, and I flick them back onto my eyes. Whereas with those ones, you can just keep them on the whole time. You can actually see stuff when it's, you know, darker.
That's why we went for them. Do you know what I mean? Because we want to be able to appeal to like your average Joe, or just like everybody. We don't want to present people with something that it becomes actually like difficult and, you know, to wear.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they work quite well.
Yeah, they do work really well.
But essentially, I mean, it couldn't be any simpler, really. Like, you put them on for either a couple of hours before bed, or if you're really into your health, put them on at sunset, because that's when the blue light will disappear. Yeah. Keep them on until you fall asleep. If you wake up during the middle of the night to go for a piss or do whatever, put them back on. If you're going to turn lights on, it's pretty much as simple as that. And the best thing about these, as opposed to like, you know, obviously, you know, we all take supplements. I'm a big fan of all your supplements. It takes a while to see the benefits of like nutritional changes or training changes, or, you know, stress reduction, all this sort of thing. With light exposure, it is instantaneous.
Yeah.
So like I've never had a bad review of these glasses. I never wanted to be a product salesman in my life. To be honest, it does my head in, but they're like the low-hanging fruit. Like, people wear blue light blocking glasses, or they use a couple of programs, one that I use on my laptop and my phone and stuff, called Iris.
Yeah, I've got that.
It's iristech.co is the website. So that filters the light from the screen, so if you're using computers or laptops late at night. Or my favourite one is on this. So I've got like this option.
How do you do that?
So it's like a manual thing. I don't know if they can see it on the camera. It's like triple click on an iPhone, and it just takes all the blue light out. I'll show you how to do it afterwards.
Well, so if I just triple click mine, it will do it?
No, you have to. It's a setting in the phone that you have to set up. But
that's quite sick.
We've got some cool resources and stuff on our website. Actually, we'll plug it at the end.
I'll link to that in the show notes, so people can do it at home.
So if you have the blue light blocking glasses on, and say you accidentally take them off, and you see the telly again, so the blue light then hits your eyes, is that like you're basically resetting your body, well, your body automatically reacts to the blue light straight away, so you've kind of wasted the work you've done by having the glass on, say, another hour or two beforehand?
So, like, it's pretty much impossible to research the exact impacts, but what we know is that blue light suppresses melatonin, right? So the longer you can keep those on, the better, the more melatonin you'll produce. We don't know if, like, any burst of exposure to blue light during the night is like, ultimately really deeply disturbing some rhythm somewhere, because the research just hasn't been done. It's well, hopefully we're going to be doing some of like the best research that's ever been done on these, to be honest.
Amazing, man. So the other thing, so you'd say at the extreme, put them on when the sun goes down. You don't want to be wearing those ones in the day, because obviously you want the blue light in the day.
Blue light, yeah.
Maybe wear the clear ones in the day if you're in, like, you know, like supermarkets and stuff like that. The lights are real harsh and it can take its toll on your eyes.
Yeah.
What are some other ways besides the glasses that people can kind of like hack their sleep for?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of, we'll just stick on light for like 1 second. Number one is like, you got to think about the opposite side of the coin, which is you've got to get a lot of natural light, right? People getting out of bed late in the morning or staying in, you know, in their houses, you got to get outside as close to sunrise as possible, really. That's going to like set and anchor your rhythm at the beginning of the day, and then at the end of the day you got to think about avoiding the wrong types of light. Now you can obviously begin to just like turn the lights down generally, like candles, salt lamps, all of these things give off warmer light, which is better. The glasses, you know, or the technology programs, if you're using technology, are, you know, the best return on investment you're going to get there. But when it comes outside of that stuff, you've got to start to think about one of the biggest other things that they've researched a lot is temperature, because you think like every single 24-hour period there's a rise and fall in the outdoor air temperature, and there's a very minute rise and fall in our body temperature. It's called thermoregulation. It falls by about 0.5 degree at night time. But if you're sleeping in a room that is too warm, you've got too many blankets, too many bed sheets, stuff like that, and your core body temperature is too high, it will massively suppress your deep sleep. So one of the biggest changes that I recently made, I got thinner duvets. I changed my mattress because my mattress was like just hugging heat, and I also have been trying out one of these things called a chili pad. You ever heard of them?
Yeah, I want. They're expensive though.
They set you back. My single bed one was about 800 quid or something like that. But it's like a temperature controlled water pad that goes on your bed, so you can set it to basically like the optimal temperature for you. And if, say, like for example, your girlfriend or your wife or whatever is like a completely different temperature, it can literally like save your relationship.
So could you? Because I'm just thinking, like, Izzy loves to be really hot when you sleep. I'm the opposite. So could you have a king one split down the middle, one side, one temp?
I don't know if the king's split, but you get like 2 singles, for example, and have like one side one temperature, one side the other temperature.
I need some of that in my life for sure.
It's
so you get like cold water.
So I mean, I think it goes as low as like 16 degrees or something like that. So it's not super cold, but I think 16 to 18 degrees is what like research shows. So like in research, they've used these chili pads, but they also like this is crazy. They use these cooling caps for people with insomnia. And they can basically take people who have insomnia, obviously really, really bad, poor sleep, broken, limited number of hours, usually gone on for years, if not decades, put a cooling cap on them, and they can get them sleeping like a normal person in a really short space of time.
When you say cooling cap,
it's literally like a cap that goes on your head that cools, because your brain is like so associated with your core body temperature that you cool the brain down, it cools down the rest of the body.
Wow. I need one of those as well.
Yeah, they're producing like these bands now that go across there. They've got like I've seen this sports performance company do like these sleeping bags, like these cooling sleeping bags and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, for your average person, just think about, you know, having a summer and a winter blanket. Think about keeping the air like well ventilated in your room. Not having like so you bathing and like showering and stuff is interesting, because you can have a hot bath, get out of a hot bath, and your core body temperature just drops, which can actually induce sleep. But if it's too close to bedtime, you will be too hot. And that's why, like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to Spain or on holiday somewhere and you find it like quite difficult to sleep when you first get there. Adjusting, it's because like the temperature is so much higher than what you're used to.
So would you say, because I'm a big proponent of cold water and cold showers, so you would say no cold showers too late in the evening?
Well, this is it, right? So when I was training quite late, I would come home and have a cool shower to cool my body temperature down. But we know that like extreme cold temperatures are going to see like a spike of cortisol, a spike of adrenaline and stuff like that. So generally speaking, like a cooler shower can like really help. Like I remember when I was younger being in Spain, just like standing in the shower trying to cool down and calm down.
But would it have the opposite effect to what you were just talking about there, in terms of if you had a really cold shower, your body would ramp the heat up and you wouldn't really want it going in that direction that late at night?
No, so if you have a cold shower, it will bring your core body temperature down, and the reason it does after a hot bath is because all the heat begins to like go from your core to your extremities and then like escapes outwards.
Okay.
So the only thing I would say is like not too cold close to bed, because that will stress your body out, and not too hot close to bed, because you won't have the chance for the core body temperature to come back down again.
Okay, cool. So glasses, morning light exposure,
temperature.
I've got a question for you. Coffee.
Oh yeah.
Fucking hell.
Everyone's going to be
know about coffee.
People, pause the podcast now and skip forward about 2 minutes if you don't want to be sad at the answer here.
Right. Okay. I've drunk coffee a lot throughout my life. I've also lived quite a high stress life. It's not done me a lot of favors. Generally speaking, it's the widest distributed narcotic that exists. It's a central nervous system stimulant, right? So it increases cortisol and adrenaline in your system. Now, at the right time, in the right situation, internally and externally, that can be brilliant, great, right? We know there's performance enhancing benefits. We know it makes you feel good, all of this sort of stuff. But there is research showing that caffeine drunk just before sleep, 3 hours before sleep, 6 hours before sleep even, disrupts, deep sleep. So I have like a couple of rules that I kind of try and say to people, cut it off at like midday, generally, maybe 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock latest. I don't have it straight away when I get up, because what you need is your body to naturally produce cortisol. So if you start to put like this artificial external source of it in, and then you take that away and you wake up in the morning, you just can't get going. So I used to try and time mine like mid-morning, say I'm getting up at 6, like between 9 and 11. Like I know that you do like the MCT, the fats in the coffee as well. That helps to like blunt the kind of spike. But generally speaking, if I drink caffeine in the afternoon, it messes me up. And I think again, it's one of these things where you just become habituated to doing it for so long, you don't notice the impact it has. Because a lot of people, in modern society will be having, a nightcap, a beer or something like that to bring them down in the evening, or doing whatever they do to like knock the edge off them. But yeah, it's just excessive stimulation with caffeine, really. I personally go through stages where I take a break from it, and recently I did. I had COVID like 8 weeks ago, so I knocked like all stimulants and stuff on the head while I was recovering, and I, according to my Oura-ring, slept a lot better. I am obviously back on the coffee now, but
of course, You're saying in the morning, kind of knock yourself out. Yeah. All right, cool.
But so one of the
just kind of hearing what I want to hear.
So like, get your light exposure in. So you need to be able to produce like dopamine, endorphins, serotonin naturally, and that's what like natural light will do for you. Cold exposure really good in the morning as well. And then like I personally I never drink black coffee now, especially not on an empty stomach. I tend to have my coffee with carbs, because my body's quite prone to an overactive stress response. So I make sure I basically eat them when I have my caffeine.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to say is when you drink, because a lot of people will get up and the first thing they'll do is have coffee on their empty stomach. Like you said, it creates this almost artificial cortisol spike. But on top of that, coffee forces your body to release hydrochloric acid. Like they'll give, say a cow eats like a bit of barbed wire fence or something, they'll give the cow coffee because it'll stimulate hydrochloric acid production and it'll like burn it up. So it's the same thing with humans, and that's one of the reasons. So the MCT oil, not only does it slow down the sort of spike and crash associated with coffee, but what it also does is it gives your hydrochloric acid something to buffer. So your hydrochloric acid can go to work on the medium chain fatty acids, as opposed to going to work on your gut lining.
That makes
give cows coffee.
When they eat milk.
Grind a bit up into their food.
Latte.
No, probably latte macchiato for the cat. I'm not sure. I've heard Paul Check talk about it.
Okay. Of course, I thought Check would be involved in this. I wonder when he was going to come up.
Every app, mate. Every app.
But I mean, coffee's a big one, and I'll just leave it here. And this isn't really for those of us who have maybe a balanced lifestyle, but if you're someone who's suffering with like extreme health difficulties in functional medicine, what we often say is that one thing that you can't give up is probably at the root cause of what like is driving that poor health. So some people, a little break from coffee can do them massive favors. Or thinking, again, one of my biggest tips is just don't have it on an empty stomach. Try not to have it after midday, and you will generally see a lot more benefit than drawback.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. One thing I heard the other day. So I was listening to Andrew Huberman's podcast.
Yes, legend.
His knowledge base is ridiculous. I don't know how he can fit all that info in his head. Like, it's crazy. But he talked about what you've just talked about in the morning. So we have a natural cortisol spike around 7 a.m. in the morning when we wake up.
Yeah.
Then you can boost that kind of naturally again by exposing yourself to sunlight.
Yeah.
Obviously, depending where you are in the world, if you're in sunny California, you might only have to get outside for a few minutes. Whereas if you're in cloudy Devon, you might have to be outside for 10, 15, 20 minutes to get the same response. But interestingly, one of the things he said is the second best time you can kind of expose yourself to light is during sunset. Because
that's interesting.
We've got these basically
low solar angle light. That's what they call it.
Yeah, and it helps with, because we have what they call adenosine. So adenosine starts to release when you get up in the morning, and this will build up throughout the day. And when adenosine gets to a certain point, that's one of the things that helps make you feel sleepy, along with melatonin.
So adenosine is the chemical that puts you to sleep.
Okay.
And it's actually so there are receptor sites in your brain. Adenosine starts to build up from when you wake up in the morning. The more of it you build up, the more tired you feel. So by evening, you've got a lot of adenosine, you want to wind down. But when you drink caffeine like kind of slots into the adenosine receptor site and basically stops the impacts of adenosine. So this is why when you get the caffeine crash, like, you feel really tired because all of a sudden, like, adenosine's rushing into all these receptor sites and it's reminding you that you've actually been awake too long or whatever. So it's fascinating. Really interesting, but that's the one that puts you to sleep. Melatonin is more about helping you to wind down. It's more about the quality of recovery, as opposed to actually like knocking you out.
I bought, me and my girlfriend had some like melatonin tabs.
Yeah.
You can't buy them though, can you? What's the crack there? You can't. It's like a not.
I used to be a fan of it, and then I started to read some of like Andrew Huberman's research and some of the data and the trials around it. And the first thing is that it's like massively unregulated industry. So some of the pills have got like somewhere between like 30% and 500% of what they actually say they've got in them.
All right.
Again, it's like this feedback mechanism where if you start to like exogenously put something into your body might produce less of it. But melatonin also has other impacts. So there's certain times of life, like during teenage years and stuff like that, where you shouldn't take melatonin supplements. But I mean, the data shows that they can have some benefit for some people. But now, as far as I'm aware, at least in Guernsey, and I'd imagine in the UK as well, it's only specialists that can prescribe them. Because at the end of the day, it's a powerful hormone, right? It's like, it's powerful stuff.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, you can't buy it over the counter in the UK.
No.
What would you, if we're sort of talking about supplements just for a second, what would you, do you have any go-tos that you think
definitely.
The like cornerstones that you personally take?
I've always taken magnesium. Now magnesium is like the most abundant mineral in your body. There's like 350 plus like chemical reactions in your body that require enough magnesium. So it's not kind of like if you take loads and loads and loads of it, it has more of an impact. But if you don't have enough of it, like 40% of what your body needs to do will not be done effectively, including producing melatonin, producing ATP, which is like energy, and doing tons and tons of other stuff. So like, again, it's one of these things like 80 or 90% of people are probably deficient in magnesium, and it shows in research that if you can like address that clinical deficiency through supplementation, it does improve deep sleep and stuff like that, which makes sense because you need enough magnesium to produce melatonin. So that's one that I've always taken. I take it, I use Epsom salts in the bath, and I also take magnesium glycinate or bisglycinate because that's like one of the more bioavailable absorbable forms.
I think that's the form as well, which is most associated with like calming the nervous system. So it would be the best one if you're looking for a magnesium supplement for sleep.
Well, there's
glycinate.
You've got to be careful because there's some magnesium supplements that will make you shit yourself. Like some of them have a big laxative effect, which for some people maybe you need that. But glycinate, taurate, and L-threonine are the types, but glycinate is generally like the most affordable. So I mix that with the Epsom salt baths, and that does me a lot of favors. But as well as that, I have experimented with reishi mushroom, really, really good. I have just started to experiment with apigenin at the recommendation of Andrew Huberman, because apigenin is the calming component of chamomile. And L-theanine is another one, so that's like a calming amino acid basically for the brain. Because
that's the big one, isn't it? A lot of people you see that and just going to the supermarket that all the nighttime, bedtime, go to sleep teas, they're always chamomile based.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of supplements you get that are like The problem is they throw a lot of stuff into a supplement. They think like the more that you put in it, the better. So like tryptophan is meant to, because essentially L-tryptophan, which is again an amino acid, gets converted into serotonin. Serotonin gets converted into melatonin. So the theory being that the more like tryptophan, the more turkey you can eat and chicken you can eat, the better you're going to sleep. I'm not like totally sold on that idea, but there's a lot of research looking at like kiwi fruit and tart cherries and all these other things. At the end of the day, that I think there's a lot of placebo around these. I'm not saying that there's no data that, you know, doesn't support them, but at the end of the day, you're going to sell yourself out to a supplement, because if you've not got your light exposure right, if you've not got your temperature right, if you're not, you know, if you're drinking caffeine at long times a day, or, you know, potentially the next one we'll talk about is like food timing. If you haven't got these cornerstones of your lifestyle correct, I don't care how many supplements you take, like you're non-optimal.
Yeah, agreed. So on that, let's go into it. So what would you suggest for people in terms of the last time they should be eating a meal?
Yeah, so there's two things you got to think about here. First is that you really need your blood sugar levels to be balanced throughout the night, because your blood sugar levels for much of human evolution have been within like quite a tightly regulated range. Now we have a lot of like processed carbohydrates, sugars, stuff like that. Again, you know, I'm not a food Nazi. I'm not saying never eat these things, but you've got to recognize what goes up must come down. So if we like spike our blood sugar levels and they go up, then say that's at, you know, dinner time, you have a nice big bowl of Ben & Jerry's or whatever. Don't know if I should be name dropping on the podcast. Your blood sugar levels go up, they dip back down again. A lot of people who are waking up at like 1 a.m, 2 a.m, either hungry, thirsty, needing the toilet or whatever. It's because when your blood sugar levels dip below baseline, your body has a stress response. That means adrenaline, means cortisol, badly timed during the middle of the night, right? So a lot of people will wake up, then they turn the lights on, I just need to go to the toilet, blast themselves with a load of blue light. By the time they've gotten back to bed, they're like, oh yeah, you know, that meeting tomorrow, or that, you know, training session, or that conversation that didn't go that well, or that thing that's stressing me out. And then it becomes this like cycle of not being able to calm yourself down again, and, you know, the cortisol is just going mental. So blood sugar levels is one thing you've got to think about. The other thing is like timing of food generally. So evolutionarily, we pretty much ate in the daylight hours, maybe around like the early evening. But number one, they've shown that basically your digestive enzymes are most effective in about a 10 to 12 hour window from the first thing you have in the day that isn't water. So they've got what we call a half-life. So after like 10 hours, your enzymes aren't working as effectively. So really like how you metabolize food isn't the same way. So my mum always used to say, you know, she struggled with weight a lot of her life. And she always used to say, well, you know, my friend Betty can eat 10 cakes and I only have to like look at one cake and I put on as much weight as Betty. But my mum was probably shoveling that cake in her mouth at like 9 o'clock at night. So like not only was she disrupting her sleep and her blood sugar levels, but like her body, her insulin response, and, you know, how she stored and metabolized those carbs, completely different in the sunlight when we would have eaten, you know, in the middle of the summer. You have loads of carbs in the sunlight because that's when your body was meant to. And whereas, you know, eating a lot of these things late at night massively disrupts that. But also just generally, you know, digestion is a very energy intensive process. So if you're eating late at night, you're more likely to get things like acid reflux, digestive issues, etc. But less of that energy is devoted to like sleep. So to like summarize that, because it's quite a lot, you know, keep your blood sugar levels balanced at dinner time. You know, don't not enjoy the occasional sweet treat, but just think about it. And also I try to personally eat at least 3 hours before I go to bed. It's not always possible. Like, let's be honest, sometimes I want to go out for a meal with my girlfriend and like have a nice time. But generally speaking, like Monday to Friday, like if you can keep your, what we call your eating window to like 10 hours, 12 hours, your body's going to digest most effectively and you're going to sleep a hell of a lot better. And they've just started, one of my favorite researchers is a guy called Sachin Panda. He's in the Salt Institute in California. And they've been looking at actually, is the next big like health intervention not changing what we eat, but changing the time that we eat. So they're looking at big trials of people where they basically like condense what we call the eating window. So like instead of eating from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. at night, which is like 16 hours of eating, they say like, you know, eat from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. the same amount of food, same amount of calories, and it drastically alters like their sleep, their metabolism, their weight, and all these sorts of things.
So it's intermittent fasting effectively.
Yeah, so they in research they call it, and I prefer this term, they call it TRF, which is time restricted feeding. because like I think fasting has some weird like connotations for a lot of people. And also, it's just I call it like circadian eating, right? It's just like, again, it's like, what did caveman Dan do? Like he ate from when the sun came up until the sun went down, and like outside of that, it didn't have a chance.
Interestingly, on the point you made about the Ben and Jerry's, I almost had the opposite effect, where I followed a quite strict ketogenic diet for quite a period of time, and then it got to a point where I started struggling with sleep.
Yeah.
And then when I started doing some research around what that might be, what I realised that basically insulin, which is the hormone which is released in response to us eating carbohydrates to bring down blood sugar, and cortisol sit on a seesaw. So when your insulin is high, your cortisol is going to be low. So if you've gone about your day, and like I was working a lot, training a lot, cortisol's high into the evening, that's getting to a point which is affecting my ability to go to sleep.
Yep.
But then if I effectively do carb backloading, which is what I do now, where I'll have say 50 grams of rice with my evening meal, that brings your cortisol level down, helps you sleep, and it's worked like a dream for me.
So this is really interesting. So I've experimented with a lot of different diets over the years. I was very hard keto addict when I was doing my masters about 4 years ago, and it gave me such great motivation, like clarity of thought and stuff like that. I couldn't put muscle on, and it really buggered up my sleep, and it really buggered up my sex hormones, because I was very high stress. So I was like drinking a lot of caffeine and doing a lot of bulletproof coffees, probably not having enough calories, still training really hard, still doing uni work, and it started to impact my sleep. But what was worse for my sleep is actually when I went carnivore, zero carb. So I just couldn't sleep. And also when I fasted, once I fasted for a week, like nothing but water for a week, and my sleep was tragic.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm a bit surprised by that. I thought after like a couple of nights it would have sort of like regulated itself and sorted itself out.
At the end of the day, we're all unique. Our biology is unique. One of the biggest issues that I've had in experimenting with these tools that other people don't seem to have is that my stress levels were very high. I put a lot of pressure on myself to succeed in my academics, and stuff like that, and starting business, and my lifestyle. Growing up, I was predisposed to a lot of stress. So for other people, this might be very different, especially people who have got a really good hormone profile, who feel like really strong and happy and healthy. They can do really well on keto or carnivore and stuff like that. But people need to be aware that not everyone is going to do well on these things. You need to listen to what's going on for your body, really.
Yeah, that's something I noticed massively, because I can it didn't affect my ability to train at all. I couldn't eat a ketogenic diet, so my breakfast will be high fat, high protein, my lunch will be high fat, high protein, and then I'll usually train in that block before I'll eat post training, and then in the evening, and in those two post training meals I'll have carbohydrate. But not eating carbohydrate pre training doesn't affect my ability to train at all. And for me, what it was just managing stress. That was what the crux of it, what it came down to, basically.
That's where I went wrong, I think, is that, I had a lot of caffeine, I had a high stress lifestyle. I was then asking a lot of my body without, any carbohydrates at all. And so my cortisol levels are just really high all the time. And what I found now is that in particular in the evenings, like you said, like whether it's potatoes, whether it's rice, whether it's squash or something like that, just a little bit of carbohydrates, kind of reduces any residual lingering stress from the day. And so that, by proxy, that reduction in cortisol leads to an increase in melatonin, because they're like inverse hormones which will support your sleep. And
I think as well, one of the other things is there's certain parts of the brain and stuff that they can only run off carbohydrates, so we need a certain level of that in our system. And if you don't, for example, so say you're running towards zero in terms of your carbohydrate stores during the middle of the night, your body's going to wake you up. And same again, adrenaline, it's time to go hunting. You need to replenish these stores, and that's the last thing you want at 3 a.m.
It is. And another thing is, you got to think about ancestrally, evolutionarily, things were changing in the seasons. Like in the summer, there was way bigger abundance of fruit, of squash is a winter thing, but there's a lot more carbohydrates generally in the summer when they're growing, and in the winter there was a lot more of a higher protein, kind of higher fat diet. At the same time, now what we're doing is being in the winter with all these lights on and stuff like that, so our body's naturally being forced into more of a stressed state. So that we've tampered with so many like environmental factors that it's hard to know. But individually, those Aura rings are really, really good. Whoop straps can be quite handy.
That's where those whoop straps.
I personally prefer the Oura Ring, just because it doesn't give off. It doesn't need to be connected via Bluetooth all the time, so it doesn't give off a lot of EMF. So the Oura Ring can track data for like a week, and you don't even have to look at it, and then you can just upload it all and like see. Yeah. For example, when I started using the Chili Pad, I just tracked the data for a week and saw the changes in my deep sleep over that period, as opposed to checking it all the time and being on my phone and connecting it and stuff like that. But a lot of other devices, from Garmin watches to Fitbits to Apple Watches, I mean, I don't personally trust those to measure your sleep very well.
Yeah.
But it's at the end of the day, you can also, I mean, there's now this diagnosis of something called orthosomnia for people who get stress about tracking their sleep. So it becomes orthosomnia. So it's like, at the end of the day, you know, N equals 1, you are the experiment. How do you feel when you get up in the morning? Yes, you might not be very aware that you could be sleeping better because you've been doing it badly for a long time, but you can begin to track, like with a simple diary, or just thinking to yourself, you know, am I feeling better as a result of making that change?
Yeah.
That's what I like about sleep science as opposed to nutrition. Is like, it's not very contentious. It's like, are you vegan, vegetarian, carnivore? Do you eat meat or not, or this or that supplement or whatever? Whereas sleep is pretty clear cut. Like, these things, light, temperature, etc., they all have an impact, and you can feel pretty quickly, like the next morning, if you feel better or not.
Yeah, and I think that's so important for people as well. Like, a lot of these scientific tools have a great place and they serve a brilliant purpose, but at the same time, something we lack in modern society is that ability to just connect in with ourselves and sit and go, did that make a difference? How am I feeling because of that? It's like we never have those conversations with ourselves anymore, and it's such an important skill to learn and develop.
Well, in terms of like sitting with yourself, you know, that would probably bring me on to, for me personally, what's been one of the most transformative things for my sleep is like a relaxation practice in the evening, because I'm a very type A. I'm go. I've got so many projects, you know, all this, that, the other. All the blue light blocking glasses and Chili Pads in the world don't stop me from going too fast in my mind. So for me, like, a little bit of breath work in the evening, or a little bit of like meditation of some form, grounding, going for a little walk outside in the evening, things like that brings your cortisol levels down naturally.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, sleep is like a push and a pull system. So like daytime, push, cortisol. But in the evening, you need to be able to pull yourself into relaxation, because otherwise you're working against that, you know.
One of the things that's helped me personally with that is just like journaling in the evening. And like the example you gave a minute ago, when you wake up at 3 a.m. because you need a piss, and all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, that's the first thing I've got to do tomorrow morning, and I haven't gone back to that email, and all these things start going through your head. Next thing, you can't go back to sleep. And one of the practices that Brendan, who's one of the coaches on the Carter Institute, he taught me is, at the end of my working day, I just make like a little to-do list. So what are the key things I've got to do for tomorrow? And then I might also do journaling in the evening, then just like write down whatever comes to me. And it seems to like take those thoughts out of my head, puts them on paper. Puts them to bed. And then mate, that was too easy. But then if I wake up in the middle of the night, those thoughts are gone. So yeah, it's been great. That's been really helpful.
There's a reason why you have those, because it's always the way I find that you go to sleep and all this stuff that you haven't thought about throughout the day, maybe because you're distracted or something, starts playing on your mind. Is that actually a chemical? Your body's haven't had a spike in cortisol during the night.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, I think evolutionarily, as human beings, in order to survive, we had to be aware of shit that could go wrong in our environment, right? So we're hardwired to see the negative in everything. So, for example, you know, waking up during the night, seeing all these things that have to be done tomorrow or whatever. Obviously, it's not a lion or a tiger that's going to come and eat us now, but, you know, for modern humans, there's a lot of psychological strain and stresses going on. But what happens is, you know, you get stuck in these loops where you start to think about something. If something is a threat to you, whether it's real or imagined, and most of the time we are creating it in our head, so it's real but imagined, then, you know, you get a release of stress hormones, because in nature, that release of stress hormones, you know, mobilized glucose to your muscles so you can run, you can fight, you can fly, all these sorts of things. But now, obviously, there's nothing you can necessarily do about that during the night, and people become fixated on it, so it becomes like a washing machine of, you know, increasing cortisol levels, and it's just spinning and spinning and spinning. But this is where, you know, one of the most asked questions of me is, what do I do when I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't get back to sleep? And I say to people, there's a few things you don't do. So you ideally, you know, you don't check your phone, you don't turn the lights on if they're LEDs, and you do tune into yourself and begin to breathe deeply through your abdomen, through your nose, and maybe come on to breathing in a second, because that's really important. But it's like you need to do the opposite of getting yourself wound up. You need to be able to wind back down, whereas most people don't have the awareness even of like the fact that your breath controls your nervous system and your stress response. So it's completely reasonable that if you check your phone, you turn the lights on, and your body's just receiving stress signals, or like wake up signal, and then before you know it, it's in full like daytime mode. And there's enough cortisol there to stop you from getting back to sleep at all. Or if you do go back to sleep, your sleep's so shallow that when you wake up in the morning, you're just like, oh, have I even slept at all?
Yeah. So say someone wakes up in the middle of the night, 4 a.m, loads of stuff on their mind. Have you got like a simple little breath work practice you can give them?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people will say 3-7-8 breathing is really good. So that's where you inhale, or 4-7-8, where you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold for 7 seconds, and you slowly breathe out for 8 seconds. I think a lot of people's breath is so restricted that that's actually too much. Box breathing is another one a lot of people recommend. Brendan's really into is box breathing. I think breath holds are generally really difficult for most people in society because their lungs are so unconditioned. So what I recommend, and it's a technique that was taught to me by the HeartMath Institute, it's what you call coherent breathing. So it's just about recognizing where your breath is at. So right now, about like 2 or 3 seconds in and out, and just kind of noticing that, and then beginning to focus on your breath through your nose into your abdomen, and just like relaxing with each exhale to the point that over the course of a minute or 2 minutes, your inhalations, your exhalations will start to get longer and longer and longer. And in particular, if you can focus on the exhale and making that longer, not forcing it, but just like relaxing into it over and over again, bringing yourself back, focusing again every time your mind wanders away, over the space of a couple of minutes, your nervous system just calms down. And like I say to people, if you can get it to like 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out, that technically brings your brain and your heart into coherence, which just turns your stress response off.
Because say when we're stressed out, people will often automatically sigh, right? And by having that, you exhale longer than your inhale, that calms the body down. It knocks it into the parasympathetic. So with that breath work, when you're saying 5 seconds in, 10 seconds out, or whatever it was, 4 and 8, that's imitating that sigh, so it's going to help the body get into a parasympathetic state.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in terms of our lifestyles. People often say to me, if you could teach people just one thing to like sleep better or live better, what would it be? And I'm there like, at the end of the day, glass is, phenomenal, eating, timing, nutrition, temperature important, but if you as an individual can't understand how to regulate your own nervous system, then you are at the mercy of the world around you, right? You have a stressful day, you have an argument with a spouse, you have got whatever. If you can't take control of and dominate the impact that those challenges are having on you, then you are just, I want to say a bitch to your environment, really.
Yeah.
You ever used sleep tape?
Oh, hell, this is a good one. Yeah, I think I left the tape in the other room, actually. Much to the detriment of previous girlfriends, that's not the reason they're previous girlfriends, and family and whatnot, I have snored my entire life. Right, just big snorer. I had no idea that for the last 3 years I've been taping my mouth at night, just a little bit of micropore, like medical micropore tape.
It's called, like I use it on the blue pack. It's just a sleep tape on.
So you can get
pull a little off and like.
You can get all sorts now. There's like Somnifix is one brand. Myo tape is another one, but I just use the regular medical tape, but really, really cheap stuff. Just put a little bit over my lips at night, just keeps them closed, so I don't breathe in my mouth and I don't snore. The depth of my sleep increased like I'd never experienced. It's huge.
I can't get on with it. I've tried
giving it to Josh and he wouldn't use it.
Keep waking up in the middle of the night and think my mouth's been stapled shut.
He likes snoring, that's why.
Well, what is snoring, man?
Oh, well, it's your throat essentially like malfunctioning during the middle of the night, right? As human beings, we were meant to breathe through our noses. The mouth is for like talking and eating. And so when we were hunter-gatherers and whatnot, you're always chewing, your jaws are really well developed. Have you ever read Breath by James Nestor?
No.
Really recommend that book.
That's why kids have all got braces nowadays, isn't it? They've got weak mouths.
This is it, right? we don't chew.
They have, bro. They have this because they're all eating this mush.
Yeah.
They need to eat more like I don't know, bamboo shoots,
more hard shit.
raw meat,
raw liver,
Raw steak,
yeah.
man.
raw steak.
That'll build your jaw up for sure.
But yeah, it's a huge problem. Like mouth breathing is an epidemic, like in modern society, and especially when you're sleeping, it's huge. But generally speaking, not everyone does it. People say, well, how do I know? And they're like, well, just use the tape and see if you wake up and you feel better or not. Ask your partner, you know, if you fidget a lot during the night, if you move around, like I roll onto my back and like snoring away, you might not be a huge mouth breather. But when people start to use it, I've woken up.
He's a massive mouth breather.
That's
Come from the biggest mouth breather.
It's like
no, mate, I'm a
biggest
tape guy.
insult.
This is the thing about the tape, because I worked a guy at England when I did some stuff over there. John Clark, hold tight, John Clark gave me like this sleeping tape, but now it's like the routine of putting it on helps me go to sleep. You know what I mean? 'Cause now when I'm putting it on, now it's time to go to bed.
Well, this is it, right? Like, maybe like talking about like routine as well as something that pins all of this stuff together. What we're talking about. It's like, you know, I put my blue light blocking glasses on. That's the first thing. My brain is now conditioned to know that, oh, it's time to chill out, dude. Like you begin to wind down. You know, the computer goes away, whatever. You make the chamomile tea. Yeah, you can take your supplements then. This, that. But when I put my mouth tape on, it just encourages me to. I'll put it on a bit before I go to bed, like much to the dismay of my girlfriend, because I'm just like, shut up, I'm not talking to you anymore. But general nasal breathing before you go to sleep is what puts you into more relaxed state before you sleep as well. So it's like, yeah. But to begin with, it can be pretty freaky. I mean, I remember when I first did it, I was traveling in Peru and I was taking myself up every night, and I was waking up with it like wrapped around my head, or like the bunk beds, or like having nightmares that people were like strangling me. But I persevered, and it was good.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was the relationship between sleep and ghrelin, because I think a lot of people will be interested in that. Ghrelin's the hunger hormone, right?
Yeah.
And that's why when you have a real shitty night's sleep, the next day you just want to eat everything.
Yeah.
So can you kind of unpack that?
Yeah. So poor sleep impacts not just ghrelin, but also insulin and also leptin. So actually, like how you store fat, how hungry you get, and how you metabolize it. So they say that like one night of bad sleep can make your blood sugar levels like pre-diabetic, but essentially it will raise ghrelin levels, because when you think about it, like out in nature, to be poorly slept is like a stress signal. A stress signal means I need probably more energy or something to survive in the long term. So like it makes sense, for me at least, from like an evolutionary lens, that you would want to take on more calories when you're underslept, so that like the next day you'd be more protected. But obviously in the modern world, a lot of people, you know, 6 to 8 hours a night. And I think, and again, research doesn't always like really tell us what's going on, but people who sleep less generally consume like 300 or 400 more calories on average daily, because their satiety and hunger signals are just so messed up. Like they don't feel full as quickly, and it generally tends to be carbohydrates that you crave and like sugar that you crave.
Well, that would tie back into, you know, cortisol being high, wanting to bring that down on a subconscious level, you're reaching for the carbs.
Sugar is bringing your cortisol levels down.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's messy, to be honest. There isn't one single area of your sleep that's unimpacted by like a poor night. I mean, one of the most recent, this is really quite cool, discoveries was something you call the glymphatic system. So you've got the lymphatic system, is like the kind of moves nutrition through your body, you know, it moves waste through the body, it like circulates all of this stuff. You got the glymphatic system, which runs from up the spinal cord through the cerebrospinal fluid into the brain. So it's active like throughout the daytime, removing waste products from the brain, but it becomes something like 10 times more active in sleep. So if you don't get enough high quality sleep over your lifetime, they're now arguing that, you know, Alzheimer's, dementia, stuff like that. I mean, the classic example is like Margaret Thatcher and all these like presidents and stuff. Oh, she did so well to only sleep 4.5 hours a night and run the country. Look at Maggie now. Well, she died a while ago, but you know,
was she in a bad way? She
was in a bad way. I mean, she had Alzheimer's and like all that sort of stuff, because being awake is low level brain damage. So like every time that you're awake and you're performing some task, your cells are producing these kind of toxic byproducts that have to be cleansed and cleaned out of the brain, and that happens in like deep sleep, for example.
Yeah, I feel that I'm useless after a bad night's sleep. Awful.
Yeah, it's horrendous. But that, I mean, another thing probably good to say is, you know, what do you do if you've had a bad night's sleep? Really hard one, you know, don't over caffeinate after a bad night's sleep. What I would do personally is I use something called binaural beats. Yeah, have you ever used those before? So I think those are like a miracle. I mean, the essential idea of it is that bi means two. The oral bit is like audio, so it plays one frequency in one ear, one frequency in another ear. The difference between those two frequencies, whatever hertz that is what it entrains your brain waves to. So you can kind of like, I've got some YouTube recordings, maybe we can put one in the show notes, something that it's like 15 or 20 minutes, I think you guys have probably used them before, and it like kind of simulates going through like a cycle of sleep without necessarily having to fall asleep. So when people say like, I can't nap, I was one of these people, like I'm crap at napping, but if I'm exhausted or I want a bit of extra recovery, or just want to be a bit sharper in the afternoon, I'll go and plug this basically like binaural beats in, and it will kind of regenerate my brain or help me to recover during the daytime. Because people think that sleep is just what you do when you're asleep, but it's not. It's like a 24-hour 7 days a week
so you don't actually sleep when you've had it in?
What with the binaural beats?
With these binaural beats?
You can fall asleep, but I don't necessarily like fall asleep if I use them during the daytime.
And you feel like you've got more zip about you when you've come out from that.
It's kind of like having a power nap, right? I don't really know what power nap feels like, because I'm not a big napper, but that's to me what it feels like.
I've heard people talk about a similar thing, but with yoga nidra.
Yeah.
Where you listen, you basically, it's a similar thing, right? You listen to a tape of someone putting you into almost like a trance sleep state.
Kind of all these sorts of things. Now, what I like about binaural beats is that I've got so many friends, family members, and myself to begin with, who like find meditation difficult, especially like if you're on your own. So like some form of guided meditation is great. Now you can listen to a yoga nidra or listen to someone guiding you through a body scan or whatever, but again you might just be wandering off and thinking, I don't really care what this guy's saying, I'm worrying about this, that and the other. Whereas with the binaural beats, the frequency of the music is actually altering your brainwave state. So even if you are the most pent up, stressed out, anxious person, I've never had someone that's not felt more relaxed after 10 minutes of binaural beats. Whereas, and just quickly say, like with meditation and stuff, if you're not good at it, you can sit there and get frustrated. Be like, I can't feel my toes, I can't do this, I can't, and people just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sort of thing. I've
found that with people with breath work, especially with guys, because a lot of the times they are very averse to sitting there and meditating or even attempting it. But with the breath work, because they feel like something's happening physically, especially with athletes as well, because they're used to using their body, and it's very much like a physical activity when you do the breath work. Really helps. Is there an optimal time for that? Like, have you seen any data showing that you should do 15 minutes or 20 minutes?
So what they say is that it's best not to do it. You should either really do it, I would say, for me personally, out of personal experience, like between 12 and 2 or 3 in the afternoon is like when we get this slump, and it's a good opportunity to have a nap or do the binaural beats. Another great opportunity to meditate or do breath work or do the beats is like just slightly before bed to help you wind down, really produce more melatonin and get to sleep. But when you see problems is people that are doing it like late in the afternoon or early in the evening, because you wake up from essentially a nap and then you're there like, oh, now I'm not tired, and so I can't get to sleep.
Mate, when I used to work in finance, this used to be my little trick, right? So when I would be shattered, I would have a big burrito for lunch, which would make me feel very sleepy, and then I would go to get a double espresso, sink it, go to the toilet, go asleep on the toilet for 20 minutes. Espresso would kick in, wake me up, and then I'd go about my afternoon at work. Not promoting that for anyone. Terrible.
Sleep on a toilet?
Yeah, I used to just go for a little doze in the
That's
toilet.
not what we did on the toilet.
That's strange.
Yeah,
Never knew that about
it. It was strange, mate. That was my little trick to get me through the afternoon.
Gave me a double espresso, I wouldn't be going for a nap.
I was at that point, mate. I was fried. There was a point where I was drinking. I was filling up one of those cafetières. I think they're like 7 shots of coffee, and I'd put it into a thermos and just top it up with hot water throughout the day. Yeah, I had a little coffee addiction for a while, a few years back.
Nuts.
Is there any other points you want to cover in terms of sleep? I think we've run the gamut a little bit here.
We've done really well with this. Let me have a think. Yeah, technology. This is a really, really simple one, right? So technology, especially if it's connected to Wi-Fi or 3G, 4G, 5G, whatever, Internet of Things, or this new explosion in the technological era, gives off electromagnetic frequencies, right? This stuff has been suppressed massively by governments and the telecoms industry and stuff. But there is like thousands of peer-reviewed studies saying that it alters your biology, right? Because it's frequency in the air that you can't see, much like audio frequencies, can train your brains like the binaural beats. These frequencies that come from our phones can alter, the way our cells function. I was really bad as a kid. I used to go to sleep with my phone under my pillow. Now I turn the Wi-Fi router off at night and I put my phone into airplane mode.
Yeah.
And just doing those two things reduces the amount of that EMF in the environment, and increases, the production of melatonin. So the research shows that, talking on a phone before bed or whatever reduces melatonin, reduces deep sleep. Again, just because of the impact it has on melatonin. So that's just a really, really easy one. It's like, if you're going to use technology in the evening, filter the light from the screens, use the apps, use blue light blocking glasses, but also like put it into airplane mode, or like turn the Wi-Fi router off when you go to bed.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a metal bed frame, because metal conducts electricity. So metal like siphons all the EMFs to that point. So I actually remember reading one of the case studies that Jake put out on the Institute, saying that he's had clients before who lost their periods and stuff, and they only came back when they changed their bed frame, because of how sensitive those people were to EMFs.
I've seen this with people who've got metal fillings and having the same thing, and they take the filling out and it has the exactly same impact.
So that kind of segues into the idea of grounding. So the best thing that you can do, so that's blue light, artificial blue light, and EMFs are what we call non-native electromagnetic fields. So non-native, really not from the earth. But the best thing that we can do to counter those is to actually touch the physical earth. So to ground yourself. There's loads of data showing that reduces cortisol, improves sleep, reduces pain, improves recovery, all that sort of thing. But a lot of the way that people get around it these days is that all plug sockets, at least in the UK, have 3 prongs, right? And the top one is the earthing prong, so you have to earth any electricity, otherwise it'll explode. But you can now get earthing bed sheets. So you can get it just plugs into your earthing socket, and it conducts the frequency of the air, so the Earth's natural electromagnetic frequency, onto your bed or onto your desk if you're working at a computer all day, or you get all sorts of different things. So I used one of those for quite a while. And actually really felt a lot of benefit from it, and I think there's some research around those as well. Yeah,
that's one of the things that I haven't personally tested out, but I've always been interested in getting one, because I know you can get ones that sort of you sit your feet on while you're at your desk. And I thought that one would be a good chat.
Really important for people who live in what we call electro smog environments. So if you're in a city, if you can open your mobile phone, look at the Wi-Fi, and you've got 10 connections near to you, you can bet your bottom dollar that you are getting fried by those EMFs. So the best thing you can do is get a grounding sheet in that kind of situation. But for most of us, it's about the proximity as well. So how close your bed is, or how close, your baby's bed is, is a really big one. So kids, kids' brains are really sensitive to light. In fact, the research shows they're more sensitive to light and they're more sensitive to EMFs than adults are. So really, really important to think about.
You can get, as well, for anyone listening that want to go full hog with this, you can get Faraday cages, which are silver sheets that go over the top of your bed.
Caps.
We're actually selling tinfoil caps.
What do they look like? Are they pleasant to look at, those Faraday cases? Bed-sized?
I think, Tim had one, and it's just kind of like a wire frame, you'd make, say, a plastic football net you'd have in the garden, they kind of plug together. It's like that goes around, and then it's,
and that's up the whole time,
a colloidal silver thing. Well, you can take it down every day if you.
See, that sounds like an eyesore.
Yeah. I suppose you could probably spend a few quid and get yourself a fancy one if you wanted. I bet this company.
It must be plastic, because they don't want metal poles holding it up. Maybe because that.
Yeah, potentially. You could get a wooden one, maybe.
Wood would be easy, just spend more time outside.
It would be, I agree.
We always try to out-engineer the fact that we came from nature. It's it's actually really fun to spend time outdoors as well. It makes you feel really good, so maybe just go outside
agree.
More.
But it's just I suppose it would be difficult if you are in if you're saying living in an apartment and there are just so many different Wi-Fi, little web of Wi-Fi coming over you and stuff like that.
You get an absolute zap.
And you can become a hypochondriac about all this stuff. I have parents sometimes message me and they're like, I'm doing everything I can, and how much EMF is in this bulb, and what's the flicker rate of this bulb, and what impact is that having? And I'm there go and breathe. Go in a dark room at night and breathe, and you'll sleep much better, because it sounds like, you know, this is causing you a fair degree of stress.
Yeah, completely agree, man. You can overcook it massively. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. You've absolutely knocked it out of the park. For anyone that wants to find out more about what you do in terms of sleep better, live better, if anyone wants to work with you in terms of your personal coaching, where's best to find you?
Yeah, so what do I do? So I do my one-on-one coaching stuff. I work generally with like high performers. I like to take people who are motivated and do what they do very well and make them do it even better. So that's like a big passion of mine. Then in terms of the sleep work, so we do work with children, do work with adults, do work with companies and organizations. So we provide like packages and programs where we provide workshops. I've built like an online learning portal platform. So if you're interested in learning about all the stuff we've spoken about today, you can go on our website, which is sleepbetterlivebetter.co.uk, and there you will find our online program, our products, and any contact details. My website is danielwhitehealth.com. And again, come and find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. It's just Daniel White Health.
Cool.
Wicked.
Awesome. I will link all of that in the show notes as well. Cool. Harry, do you want to do your plug?
No,
Harry.Williams91.
Nice and simple.
It's nice and simple, man.
I'm _nutrition on Instagram. apenutrition.co.uk is the website if you want reishi we talked about today, or our new ones, optimise male, beef organs, all the other good stuff we talked about.
I'm just obsessed with your supplements. Like, there's not a single client that I'm hesitating ever recommending them to.
Yeah,
that's what he likes to do, mate. Look at a little grin on his.
Just go work with Dan, and then you'll get recommended one way or another.
Between both of you, we'll sort you out. Right.
Right. Thanks for listening, guys. That's been awesome.
Cheers. Take it easy.